everybody, and welcome to the carb counting segment of our Healthy Eating Week for Diabetes Education. My name is Caroline Fornshell, and I'm super excited to kind of show you how to estimate about how many carbs you're having. So we've got a couple tools here today, and it's really helpful to have these things handy at your house too. It helps you double check the way that your eyes estimate are often different to the true estimation, okay? So today I have measuring cups. I also have just measuring tools in general. I have a portion control tool, and I have a 9-inch plate, okay? So we're gonna get to those things. You might also have a food scale, which can be super handy, although it is more work. You'll note as you're estimating carbohydrates, the more work you put into it, the more accurate you're gonna be. So you pick where you are and what tools make sense for you right now. I'm going to show you the standard way to do it, and then we'll break off into a couple of other ideas for those of you who want to make it easier. All right, so for starters, use your healthy food list. They'll be in your binder in the healthy eating section. There are 2 different lists, and you'll go over this with your moderator. One of the lists is for, we're thinking more sedentary individuals or more or smaller women. The other list is higher calorie level for more active individuals and more likely are men. So from that standpoint, you can look at that list and you can see which foods are identified as carbohydrates. What's really cool about the list is that every food that you see, and you'll see grains, you'll see starchy vegetables, you'll see your fruits, your legumes, and your dairy and alternatives. And all those foods count as carbs for us. It doesn't get to the treats on that, and we'll get to that in a second. But if you can look at that list and look down and say, okay, well, if I want to have a sweet potato, how much is that? And you might see a 2 by 4-inch section, or you might say half a cup. Each one of those servings in each area of the list under carbohydrate are equal to each other in the number of grams of carbohydrates. This makes life super easy for you. If we're looking at estimating the serving size of these carbohydrates, no matter what type of carbohydrate they are, you're going to get really good at having a consistent amount of carb food through the day. This evens out our blood sugar and helps our metabolism work a little bit better. So this is a wonderful tool, a really effective tool. Use your list, follow along with me today, but also you'll be able to use that list with your moderator during your healthy eating Zoom call, okay, for the diabetes education program. Okay, so for starters here, I'm gonna show you how to do a couple of grains, okay? I have some just basic rice, okay? This is basmati rice. I'm not saying you should eat it. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I'm just saying this is how we would measure it if in case you do, okay? So each 1/3 cup of rice is considered 1 serving. So instead of using your serving spoon at your house or whatever else you use to move the rice from the pot to your plate, I prefer to use this as your serving spoon, okay? This is an easy way to keep it together. So for me, I'm saying, all right, well, great. I'm going to measure out about 1/3 cup of this rice. This is 1 carb serving, okay? So it's super easy because now I'm just gonna put it right into my bowl, and now I have 1 serving of rice. And you might be looking at me saying, Caroline, I'm gonna eat more than that. That's totally fine. You can have multiple servings of rice or multiple servings of carbs, but you've got to work that out with your registered dietitian in that MNT meeting, in that nutrition therapy meeting, okay? So you got to figure out how many servings you can have. Most of us have at least 2. Now you're talking, right, guys? That almost looks like the start of a good meal. Some people are going to look at this and say, that's too much, Caroline. I'd never want to have that much. Okay, that's fine, but at least now you know how to measure it out. If you're going to have 1 serving, which is 1/3 a cup of rice, or 2 servings, which is 2/3 a cup of rice, or even some of you are going to really aim more for 3 servings, which would be a full cup of rice. This is called 3 carb servings or 3 carb choices, same thing. Each 1/3 cup is considered a serving or a choice. So if some people are able to have 1 per meal, some people are able to have 2 per meal, some people are able to have 3 or more per meal. So figure out how many you can have with your registered dietitian. We do this same thing for other foods as well. Okay, so now that we're past our rice, I can also look at doing that for other grains. Let's pretend that this is quinoa. Same kind of thing. This is going to be more of a 1/2 cup though for our oats. Okay, so oats are not as dense. You can get a little bit more in there. So let's say we can do about a 1/2 cup serving, of oats. Wonderful. So now we know what that looks like. We consider it the cooked volume, and now we have a 1/2 cup of oats. Some of you will have more of that. Some of you don't eat oats at all, and that's fine too, okay? All right, so then we look over, those are our grains. Then we can look over and say, all right, well, what about our starchy vegetables? Our humble sweet potato. See the size of this guy? This is just about 4 inches, not including the little ends, which we'll probably cut off, but about 4 inches here in the center is correct. We have about 2 inches or 1.5 inches or so in your, from top to bottom. That's one way to estimate how many carbohydrates you're going to get from this, okay? So a 2 by 4 inch piece of sweet potato is 1 serving. And you might look at this and be like, Caroline, I could eat 15 of those. And some of you will say, Caroline, I can't even eat a whole one. So that's where we have to figure out how many carbs can your body handle. We've got here 1, 2, and 3. This would be 3 carb servings, which would be the same amount of carbohydrates as 3 carb servings of rice. This ends up being the same in the quantity of carbohydrates, right? So if you have a monster sweet potato and you know they can run really big, you just have to estimate it in 4-inch segments by 2-inch segments. And that's how you'll know how many carb servings you have. I've used these little small ones because they're easier. This might be all you need, So depending on your needs, as you'll work out with your dietitian, you'll get there. Now, some people say, Caroline, I've been told not to eat the whites. Why are you telling me that rice is the same as these sweet potatoes? That's a quality issue, guys. We're not talking about that right now. Some people are going to be fine eating rice and it won't affect their blood sugar. Other people are not going to be fine eating rice. It will affect their blood sugar greatly. Some of that has to do with our gut bacteria, and that's a different session. We're going to talk about that, I think, in session 8. But for now, for session 3, we're looking at quantity of carbs. These 3 sweet potatoes at 2 by 4 inches each are the exact same amount of carbs as our cup of rice. Okay, so that's the thing that we're talking about, quantity today, not quality. On that thing, we can also say, all right, well, heck, what if I want to have a snack? Like, hey, we can work that in, guys, no problem. We're going to do the same thing. Each cup of popcorn is 1 carb serving or 1 choice. Okay, so that works out for you because that means that we can actually get 3 cups of popcorn. This is maybe a heavy 3. I'll have to put a little bit back. But we'll get about 3 cups of popcorn is 1 popcorn serving. Whew, we can get it in, guys, don't worry. All right, so now we can pour this, of course, into our bowl. And now we have a perfect carb serving. 15 grams is 1 carb serving. And so we have a perfect carb serving. You can work this in as long as you do it strategically. Talk to your moderator of your group or your dietitian to figure out how to eat this so your sugar does not shoot straight up, okay? But you can measure it out and at least have a predictable blood sugar afterwards. So as we're trying to figure out our foods, some of the foods are standard. Our foods like our fruits, our starchy vegetables, our grains, even our popcorn, you can look at that list, that healthy food list, and find out how much you can have to equal a carb serving. If you have a box of crackers, you're gonna probably prefer to look at the food label. Okay, so here's a food label for you. You can grab something right out of your refrigerator. You can see that in this case, I'm gonna start with the nutrition facts. I'm gonna try to hold this steady. You'll start with the nutrition facts. Say, okay, well, step one, look at how many servings are in that container, okay? So you'll say, oh, in this case, we have quite a few. We've got 5, and that's going to end up being equal to about 10 crackers. So according to these guys, they're saying, hey, look, you know what? You can have about 10 crackers, which would be a serving. Now, the thing is that their serving is going to give you 21 grams of carbohydrates. That's a little higher than our carb serving amount of 15. So we're going to look at this and say, for you, for one serving, it's probably going to be 7. Okay, that's how we're going to get our 15 grams of carbs. If you're saying, hey, Caroline, I'm allowed to have 3 carb servings, then I'll say, oh, you lucky person, that gives you 21 crackers to get your 45 grams of carbs, which is equal to 3 carb servings or 3 carb choices. So in this case, this box, 21 crackers, is going to be equal to all this rice, or that's going to be equal in quantity to these potatoes. You can see that 21 crackers is not going to get you very full compared to 3 potatoes. Okay, so that's where we have to be choosy about the types of carbs that we're eating in order to feel full and to control our blood sugar. Again, this is about quantity, not about quality. That's a different talk, okay? But at least this way we have a way of measuring our carbs so that we can accurately estimate how many to incorporate into our meal. You've also learned about Plan the Plate. Plan the Plate makes it easy to assess how many carbohydrates you're putting on into your body. You've seen this a couple times, and I'll bring this a little closer. You can see that half the plate is divided into our non-starchy vegetables. A quarter of the plate is our starchy vegetable, in this case a sweet potato, and a quarter of the plate is our protein. This is one way to limit the amount of carbohydrates we put into our body just by assessing each plate and making sure that there's not more than a quarter of the plate dedicated to our starchier carbs, grains, fruits, starchy vegetables, legumes like beans, and even some of our dairy alternatives and dairy like yogurt. So those foods are all our high carb foods, and we want to put those only on about a quarter of the plate. By using this strategy on a 9-inch plate, it will be easier for you to measure out your carbs and keep them consistent at each meal. I love the Plan the Plate process. It's very easy to do. You don't have to carry these around all the time, but you'll get pretty close to being where you should be on your carb amounts as you work it out with your dietitian or through your moderator, okay? Other things that are really handy are using these types of bento boxes or as a wonderful portion control tool. It's very similar to the plate method. You can see, okay, we got 3 containers and we have 3 different types of foods. Same thing. You can put your protein in one of them and your carbohydrate in the other and certainly have the same result where you have a really nice balance of carbs and proteins, but that you're not overeating and you're eating just enough to keep your sugar stable, but not too much that shoots your sugar up. So using the plate method or a portion control tool like the bento box is another great way of estimating your carbs and keeping them consistent for each meal. When your carbs are consistent for each meal, it helps make sure that your medications work better. So for those of you who are not on medications, it'll help make sure that your body's natural response to food is as productive as it can be to continue your metabolism working and functioning the way that you want it to. So that's carb counting in a nutshell. We want to first try to use our measuring cups compare the measuring cup amount with what's on your food list, your healthy food list that's in your binder. Using this with the healthy food list will help make sure that you are eating the right amount of carbs as you've decided with your dietitian or with your moderator. If that doesn't work, that's okay. We can continue to use the plate method or even a portion control tool to help make sure that you get the right amount of carbs. But don't forget, when you do have a box, defer to the food label.